we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections.
If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious.
Violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa and other radical left-wing groups who are terrorizing the innocent, destroying jobs.
Will. As always, guys, like, share, subscribe, all those good things. We appreciate you guys for hanging out with us here in the show. And we got an awesome guest for you guys here today, Steven Kuhn, who is, I'll let him introduce himself, but he's an awesome guest and excited to have him here.
Thank you so much. My name is Steven Kuhn. I'm living in Turkey. I'm a veteran, served in the U.S. Army, and been abroad for about 30 years. Been highly involved in business and in politics. And I've been a Trump supporter since 2016 when he started, and have put up with enough flack for that through my life, but it's well worth it so far.
Well, I think a good way to kind of introduce you and introduce some of the topics we're going to cover today is by playing a video you had that recently went viral, and it definitely lays the groundwork for this. And guys, there is one piece of foul language in here, so if you got any kids in the room, I forgot to edit it out. Just earmuffs.
Some of you may know my wife is Ukrainian. We live in Turkey. I'm an American. And right now in Ukraine, there's a war going on with Russia, as everyone knows, right? The most sickening, disgusting thing that just happened is everyone's saying Ukraine sent missiles into Russia, which they apparently did. But that came through the direction of our U.S. government. Why now? Why now? You don't think hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian deaths are enough? Hundreds of thousands of Russian deaths are enough? Look, I was in a fucking war. I know what war's like. I fought on the front lines. But I can tell you this. Anyone who thinks this is a Ukrainian-Russian war just doesn't have their head screwed on right. Everyone should feel sorry for all the civilians involved. Everyone should feel sorry for the Ukrainians because they're being completely gutted by my government. The trillions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, whatever it is, that's going to Ukraine, goes directly to the U.S. government contractors in Ukraine, and to the weapons labs and all these other things, bioweapons labs, all these other things in Ukraine. You guys probably think this is a conspiracy. Well, it's not. So all the money that the U.S. taxpayers are giving to Ukraine are going to government contractors and going right back to America. In the government, the pockets, right? Right in the pockets of the people that are giving the money in the first place. And you know where it goes after that, so I'm not going to get into that, right? This is coming to an end, apparently, because Trump came into office. So what's happening now? They need to get more money quickly before Trump comes into office. And they need to start a war to make even more money. So that's where this is going. You think I'm nuts? Watch the news. Watch what's coming. Europe is terrified. At least conservative Europe is terrified. Liberal Europe, they're preparing by moving out of the battle zone, right? Politician friends of mine, terrified that the only way to stop this is for something to happen in America, for someone to step in to stop this. Zelensky isn't a president, he's a puppet. Everyone knows that. He's the lackey of the American government. All that trillions of dollars, and it is trillions, it's not just millions, it's like over $1 trillion that's gone in there now over the years, that's in Ukraine, is given to the people so they could stay in power. The people that are bouncing around there, taking personal pride. Look at Zelensky has 4 villas all across Europe. Right? Where did that come from? He was an actor, right? And now he's a president who's revered in the entire world. He's a puppet. He's put in place by the U.S. government. He's funded by the U.S. government, and he does whatever the U.S. government tells him to. And I don't want to say government because there's a certain part of the government that does. It's not all the government. Here's the deal. My wife's parents are here in Turkey. We brought them here as refugees because their city's being fucking bombed by Russia. If Russia ever wanted to take out Ukraine, it would have been done a long time ago. They don't want to. They just want to keep them at bay. They want to keep NATO at bay. They want to keep people keeping their word. If you know anything about the past and the Minsk Accords, get into it. If you don't understand what's going on, right? But in the end, it's the people that are suffering. Her parents are here. They've been here now going on to 1.5 years or 2 years, whatever it is. They can't go home. They couldn't go home anyway because their houses are bombed. Their apartments are bombed. And we're sitting here on the precipice of World War III because a group of ultra-wealthy individuals want to make even more money after killing hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians. And for me, especially Ukrainians, they're the ones that are suffering. My wife's suffering, her family's suffering. And what are we doing about it? Sending more billions of dollars to more government contractors in Ukraine so that they could get paid back in America, and the people who gave them the money get their kickbacks. It's fucking sick. So anyone out there who wants to challenge me on this, bring your facts. Bring them, right? And all you government contractors and all you military guys, my friends that are, pro-Ukraine and let's go crush Russia. Think about it for a second, what you're talking about, all right? Man, this is not a good place to be. I'm telling you, this can change the world if we don't get this shit and get it right now. Raise your voice.
Well said. And that leaves us a lot of places to go. And maybe the first thing we ought to start with is the history there, because I think a lot of people here, especially in the U.S., don't understand that it's NATO, it's us. We broke a lot of these deals, and even just verbal contracts, handshake agreements, other things is regarding expansion of NATO, and then interference in Ukraine's elections going back to 2014 when the Obama regime essentially ran a coup over there.
Indeed, the Orange Revolution, as they call it, right? It was a CIA op. It was a CIA op that took over the government and made it look like it was Freedom Party, like they always do. And we ended up getting ourselves into this mess. And then there was a whole push for a war, and then there was a regime change, and then there was another change, and then Trump came into office, and they had to delay that. And then they waited for the Democrats to get back in, and then they went forward again. So this has been a proxy war since before 2012, but actually put into action in 2012, 2014.
Man, it's wild. I mean, it's one thing because I think a lot of us kind of had at least a surface level understanding of what you had said in the video. But I think it's totally different whenever it's somebody with your experience. You're married to someone from Ukraine. I mean, you're living in Turkey, and you to come out and say these things. I think that for probably the average American who probably didn't know about these things or wouldn't listen to someone such as myself, you were able to reach those people. And probably for the first time ever, they were actually not just hearing it, but listening to what you were saying in terms of this corruption that's going on right now. Do you think that Zelensky is basically self-enriching himself from a lot of the money and stuff that we're sending over there? I mean, that's what I believe. What are your thoughts on that? Well,
just look at Zelensky's profile. If you look at all of the prime ministers and look at Trudeau, look at Macron, look at the Austrian guy, Kutz or whatever his name is. They're all young, good-looking, good-speaking, good-looking guys. Oh, look at this guy. He's great. He's going to be a great orator. Obama's a great orator. They're just puppets, man. They're being paid to be there. I'm sorry if this is going to blow some people's minds, but he's an absolute nobody. Yeah. Right. He has no decision-making power at all. He's told exactly what to do. He's told exactly what to say. And of course he gets paid for that. And he's enriching himself. I mean, I remember when the war broke out, the finance minister of Ukraine stood up in parliament and said, hey, where's our gold? Because one of the first things that the Americans did is when the war broke out is they flew all the bullion out of Ukraine on military aircraft back to America. And if you want to know about that, Germany asks every year for their gold bullion from the Second World War, and America's like, nope, you're not getting it back. So, there's a whole thing behind what's going on here that a lot of people don't know anything about. And when you're in my position where I'm ex-military, I'm a veteran, I get asked a lot to do consulting or advisory. And I was asked to go to Ukraine to help set up a command and war staff college through a retired general from the Marine Corps, through his staff. And I was like, man, I am not getting involved in this at all. It's disgusting what's going on. I'm looking at my wife and her parents here every single day, and they're suffering over here. Okay, they're not suffering in Turkey, but they're suffering because they had never left Ukraine in their life. They lived there their whole life. They're over 60 years old. And now they're living in Turkey, don't speak the language, can't work, don't have any income or nothing. And then, of course, they cut her pension down to $200 a month because she left the country. $200 a month. And so who's flipping that bill? We're flipping that bill on top of everything. So this whole war, or whatever you want to call it, has been in process for years and years and years. And this is the globalists, or whoever you want to call them, just lining their pockets. And now they're upping the game because they got to get a lot more out. If this ends, they're gonna turn the faucet off, and they want to make sure they get as much as possible before they go. And that's why Biden's down there in Africa right now, giving more billions away.
Yeah, we just heard he's sending another $1 billion in weapons their way, despite there potentially being a peace deal on the horizon there. You brought up them Zelensky, which everybody knows he's a puppet. I mean, this guy was a comedian and an actor prior to being installed as the president there. But they're buying up property all over the place right now. Zelensky's bought his mother a villa down in Israel, another property I can't remember what country now, and then you have a lot of members of the Ukrainian government buying up property all over Florida right now. We're actually probably going to cover that later this week. This is our tax dollars that were laundered through their government, through U.S. defense contractors. A lot of it's ended up back in politicians' pockets here, and when the truth becomes out about all this, I think the American people really are going to be furious. But as you said, like, all this has done is led to more death and destruction, more lost Ukrainian and Russian lives as this war has been further extended. In reality, like you said, the Russians they're definitely not the good guys in this scenario, but they're not Satan incarnate either, like our media likes to portray them as. I guess maybe. So like with your wife's parents and your wife, they moved over the border. They've been gone now close to 2 years. As you said, so like their property has been destroyed, I assume. How many other people have fled the country and had to make a similar move to your wife and her family? Well, just here in Turkey, there's over 1 million that fled. Oh, wow.
There's in Turkey, it's like little Russia, little Ukraine now, in certain areas, especially here where we live. There's countless stories every day that you can talk to people. Here's the thing, though, is that the ones who got out, there's two groups of people that got out. The wealthy that are driving their Range Rovers and their, Rolls Royce and stuff like that, they got out easily. And then you have the other people that got out that were brought out by people like us. We were able to bring her parents out. Everyone else, they got stuck inside and they can't leave. My mother-in-law, when she was leaving, they said, you have to stay here or you're going to lose your job. And she's a government employee. So that was the first issue. Second issue was they had just changed the law that you have to speak Ukrainian now. She doesn't speak Ukrainian, even though she's Ukrainian, because she lived in Eastern Ukraine, which is, of course, Russian. Yeah. So when they changed the law and said you have to speak Ukrainian, she couldn't keep her job anyway because she doesn't speak Russian. And then they said, you're going to lose your job if you leave. So it's either stay here at the risk of dying at war and keep your job, or leave and lose your job. So, it's like you have no choice. You can't win. And there are stories, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of stories like that. And so let's say the working class got stuck in there, and they're the ones dying for their country, for our country, I guess you could say. They're dying for our country's profits. It's sickening. It is sickening to see this happen.
It absolutely is. And you said something a second ago, and maybe we'd heard it a long time ago and I just forgot, but you mentioned that we flew the gold from Ukraine out of Ukraine. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because I feel like me on the show and watching these shows and stuff, I probably am a little bit more in tune than the average person, my neighbors over here. And so if this is kind of news to me, I would say this is news to a lot of people. Can you kind of elaborate on how much gold that was, how they did this, how they tricked these people? Because it is truly, that is mind blowing. That's shocking. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I don't know how much it was, but I do know that the finance minister stood up in Parliament and said, "Where the hell's our gold? Where's it gone?" And they shut him down quick, and he disappeared after that. Wow. So who knows where he is? They literally flew it out on the C-130s or C-5As, whatever they were. They flew them out. I don't know how many plane loads it was, but it's all gone. It took all the bullion,
which is the real currency. So we took their gold and here's some paper dollar bills. Here you guys go. Kind of what they did when they ended the gold standard here in America years ago to our ancestors.
Well, you know how America and the World Bank and all that, the monetary fund, they all work. They'll give cheap loans, and then once you get the loan, They ask you to pay it back, and they say, well, if you can't pay it back, then you got to give us all of your state goods and your properties and all this kind of stuff. It's, the economic terrorism. The same thing happened, during the coronavirus in Chile. Pfizer said to the Chilean government, since you can't afford the vaccines, we'll give them to you, but you give us all your military bases. It's like these are things that you don't even hear about. I'm like, wait a second, what does a pharmaceutical company want with military bases?
Yeah.
So that just shows you how connected everything is here. It's one sort of establishment that's running the show, and they're trying to get their goods and trying to make us all sort of into this little package that they can control. But in the end, it's the people that are suffering, as we always do, whether it's in Pennsylvania or it's in Ukraine. It's always the people that are paying the bills. It's always the people that are paying the highest amount. If you add everything up that people are paying, then no one's making any money anymore. You're basically working for the man constantly. And what we try to do, we try to add value everywhere we go. And we try to help those that need the help. But right now, getting into Ukraine and trying to make something happen there, you're basically running up against the wall, because the big NGOs and the big the big organizations and all the government contractors, they don't want any competition in there.
Yeah.
They got it locked up. They want it for them. They want all the money for them. And, when some of these guys found out my past, they didn't want me going to Ukraine anymore.
Sure.
Because my past is also in politics in Germany, which is what we might talk about later with the AfD. They heard that, and they're like, well, maybe this guy isn't the right guy to bring in. So, because no one wants anyone's nose going to, no one's even, and this is the first war we've had since the Gulf War that isn't on TV. Have you noticed that? I mean, remember the Gulf War? Every single move was on TV.
Well, yeah, I remember that.
I think people have seen it for a while. Like, where's the footage of this war that's taking place? Like, there's not any on the TVs or anything. It's been very fascinating.
It's all bullshit. That's why, because it's not happening. What's happening? Look, the first thing that Russia did when they went in there is they took out the bioweapons labs. There was coronavirus bioweapons labs, and there was 12 labs in Ukraine that were taken out by the Russians when they went in. One of the first things he did. And number two is if Russia wanted to take out Ukraine, he'd have done it in probably a couple of weeks or a month or so, easily. Look at those kinetic weapons that he has. I mean, that changes everything. That's just incredible. And so all these people, Putin's going to. He just said, look, you guys said you wouldn't move east. You did it 9 times. I think it's time to stop.
Yeah.
And you're not being a sympath. I'm not being a Russian sympathizer. It's as simple as that. Like, we're nations, sovereign nations that have agreements with each other, whether it's verbal or otherwise. That's our duty to hold them up. That's what people call integrity. Integrity is simple. Do what you say you're going to do. Don't do what you say you're not going to do. And if you screw up, fix it, make it better, and apologize. And our government is not good at either one of those.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing too. You can see the freak out among a lot of the politicians here, especially as Tulsi Gabbard mentioned, releasing the information to the American people regarding these illegal U.S. biolabs that were in Ukraine. Guys, we got to take a quick break here from one of our sponsors, and then we're going to be right back with even more.
My name is General Mike Flynn, and I want everyone to know that I stand fully behind Beverly Hills Precious Metals and its owner, Andrew Sorcini. We are facing one of the greatest periods of financial uncertainty in both American and world history, and so now is the time to organize your finances. With the advent of the BRICS pay system, we need to now seriously consider how we can take better care of ourselves and our families and start some serious decision making when it comes to our wealth. You can also ask about their newest 2-ounce coin of yours truly. It's an absolutely great gift, and I am deeply honored to be part of history, as well as helping people protect their finances, their wealth, and their investments. So visit gold.generalflynn.com. Tell them the General sent you. Thank you so very much. God bless you, and God bless America.
Guys, thank you for staying with us. And the best way to support our program and all the programs on Patriot TV is by supporting our sponsors. So please go to gold.generalflynn.com and help secure your financial future, even if it's just setting aside some assets to protect them in case, World War III or something else pops up here on the near horizon. And I guess that's a good question for you, is what do you think is going to unfold over the next 40 some odd days prior to Trump being inaugurated, it seems they're wanting to kick things off even more to a greater degree in Ukraine and many other places around the world, that they're essentially trying to set traps or ensnare us into World War III or some other larger conflict that he won't be able to just back out of or set up an easy peace deal. If there's an attack into NATO, or if NATO nations attack into Russia, then we're on a very different path.
Well, my only hope is that Putin sees what's going on, and I'm sure he has some back channels going with the Trump team in one way, shape, or form, and that he can hold off, that he sees what's going on, that he actually knows that the only chance he has is for him to hold off. Now, whatever that means is because when they said they sent in missiles deep into Russia, it was like 120 miles. That's not deep into Russia. Russia goes all the way, all the way to the other side of the planet, basically. And so, there's the propaganda that's out there saying, okay, we're going into Russia and stuff. They're really not. It's just a little blip inside the borders. But still, they set off some kind of nuclear weapon. That's going to change everything. And now Putin's alluded to the fact that he would use those kinetic weapons, which are incredibly damaging. They can go all the way through any kind of bunker at all without destroying without any collateral damage. So they could strike so precise that they could completely decimate NATO. Now, what worries me is that we got kids all over Europe, just like you do everywhere else, and these kids are sitting there just wondering what's going on. And everyone thinks it's huge, but it's not. If you look at Ukraine, it borders Hungary, it borders all the way to Poland, all the way around, and that's not far away. I mean, you're talking a couple hundred miles from war, and if there's a nuclear blast that goes off, that's some scary stuff. That could change the landscape of the entire planet within a minute. So I'm hoping that, who am I? But I'm hoping that Putin, he shows some restraints and use some maybe strategic planning to try to get this, try to draw it out until Trump comes into office. Even if Trump has any power by then, because let's face it, he can't change everything overnight.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the thing. I think Putin's shown an incredible amount of, whatever you want to call it, grace, discernment, whatever, in not further escalating this conflict. I think he wants out of it too. And he knows until Trump gets into office, there's no way our current regime is going to back down. They clearly want to continue feeding the war machine, funneling money to their allies, and unfortunately, that's going to cost more American or more Ukrainian and Russian lives in the process. That there is not the only resolution of this conflict is going to be some sort of a peace agreement. Otherwise, it's going to be just an endless meat grinder where more and more civilians, soldiers, and young men are killed from both countries.
Well, it's a good thing that people are waking up. People are really, really, really waking up to it right now. When I talk to my wife, she talks to all of her friends that are still in Ukraine that are checking on her place is completely bombed out. The windows were blown out the other day. So my wife's apartment is still halfway decent, but the parents' apartment is gone. And so we still have regular contact in there. The problem with Ukraine is they don't have any external news on the inside. So a lot of them believe the hype. They believe that Russia's the bad guy, right? You want to add something to that? Come here for a second. Yeah, this is my wife, Olga. It's my wife, Olga. She can add some insight to that about the friends that she's talking to over there that are still living in Ukraine.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. A lot of people who stay there and still they believe, they're listening to news, what Ukrainian channels, they still listen a lot of TV. So these news are providing that Russia is a bad guy who is attacking and trying to take our lands. And people believe in this, especially people like Steven told, who are working class and they don't have too much money to leave the country. So they are staying there, believing what they're telling on the TV and believe this, and they're blaming Russia a lot. And actually the truth is there a lot of most each Ukrainian person has a relative in Russia, because like my mom, she was born originally in USSR and was Russia. So I have an aunt living in Russia and my cousins living in Russia. So all Ukrainian people, they have relatives in Russia. And so because of all this mess, people became enemies forever, because people who don't really get deep inside this and don't understand the situation, what is happening in reality, Ukrainians blaming Russia that they're trying to take their lands. Russian people are blaming Ukrainians so that they are doing also like attacking Russia. So people became like enemies, and like families were destroyed for forever.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that, based on what you were just saying there, and I know this is not the correct term, but it's almost kind of like a civil war in a sense from a culture standpoint, like how in America, how, we were still the United States, we had North and the South, it was brother versus brother, we had families that were torn apart over this. It sounds like it's kind of similar in that regard, at least, with what's going on between Russia and Ukraine, when you have families on each side of this. A lot of people speak Russian, and they're fighting against each other and been turned against each other. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah, I think so. I think that a lot of people, like my mom is telling why her sister, she was stopped to talk to her for a while, because she was really thinking and like that really Ukrainian people are guilty in this, and a lot of Ukrainians thinking the same, like about Russia. So yes, a lot of people nowadays, they start to understand, they start to have some another info, they start to really understand what is happening, so that it's not that Russia wants to take lands of Ukraine, that this is war between America and Russia. And unfortunately, it happened that Ukraine became like in the middle of this war. Like my mom always told that I never ever in 100 years was thinking that something can happen to Ukraine, that some war can even happen there. Because like we were like, I remember how I was growing and everything was so peaceful, and like it's not a country who were like somehow like somewhere in the middle of some political conflicts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I think the president whom they choose like several years ago, I think he earned such a huge trust from Ukrainian people, because when he was still as an actor, he was always joking about like some politicians who are like stealing money from people. And so like normal ordinary people, like working class, they really believed in him, and they really believed that he will take a lot of problems from them. That's why I think it was like very big point to gain the most of the population of Ukraine for trust.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, because again, as an actor, as this comedian, he just had to say and do the right things. But like you said earlier, there's a puppet. Somebody else is pulling his strings. Maybe Zelensky really did want better things for Ukraine, but it doesn't matter, because the people controlling him, that isn't what they want. They drew the country into war. There had been conflict in the Donbass region for a while. A lot of people, goes way back in the history from when the Soviets controlled the area. They moved other Russians over there, both for farming. Some of them were buying resort homes, things like that. But the problem is, like, today, then that was leveraged to then begin this conflict. Where do you see, and I guess this is kind of speculative, but where would you see, if there is a peace agreement drawn up, will Russia retain part of territory in Ukraine? And then I assume Ukraine will have to give back the territory into Russia that they've taken.
I have no idea on that, but I can only assume, like she was born and raised in Ukraine and speaks Russian. So that part of Ukraine is absolutely Russian majority. So yes. I don't, and they want to stay there. They right. Do they care if it's Ukraine or Russia, or they just want to be left alone?
Yeah, they just want peace. And actually, my parents and a lot of like families living there who speak Russian, and they say we can join Russia. We just want that war will be finished. Yeah. For us, it doesn't matter. Just want peace and to come back to our home, because really nowadays, like so a lot of families, they're really suffering. A lot of like countries here in Europe, they're helping and giving money to Ukrainians. But anyway, they're staying outside of their home, and all these children who saw this, they for all their life they have PTSD, and for all their life they have this trauma of a war, what they will never ever forget.
40% of the children in Ukraine right now have PTSD, diagnosed with PTSD. 40%. They've lost their childhoods forever.
Yeah.
And that's just diagnosed. Who knows? I mean, I would say it's probably closer to 100 if you really take in the undiagnosed. How could you not have PTSD living through what these poor children are living through right now?
Horrible. It's horrible, man. But in the end, I don't know what's going to happen. I can only imagine there'll be an agreement where the Donbass region will stay Russian, or at least somehow an agreement. Because what people also don't know is that in Ukraine, the Russians in that region were treated horribly and beaten and chased and harassed. Yes. And also, there's a Hungarian minority in Ukraine as well. And if they speak their own Hungarian language, it's the same thing happens to them. They have to speak Ukrainian. It's like it's incredible. So there's a lot going on there. No one knows. That's why there's no press on the inside. That's why you only hear the narration and nothing else. It's a horrible thing. And look, everyone worries about their own life. Everyone worries about their own thing. Where's my next meal coming from? And I'm talking globally. I'm not just talking about someone who's in Ukraine. And so it's hard to keep people's attention and to get them to actually give a shit what's going on. Excuse my French. To actually care what's going on. Well, when you're personally affected, like we are, or like she is with her family, and I am through that, it makes you sit up and think all the time, which is why I spoke up. And it was just a personal plea on like people that I know. And I didn't realize it was going to go this crazy and people were going to go nuts about it and stuff. But no, it's a good thing. It really is. And I appreciate you guys bringing us on, because it needs to get out there that there's real lives behind these stories and these narratives and all this BS and all the flag waving and stuff like that. There's real people out there that are suffering, man, and they're hurting bad. And we just want this stuff to end, and it needs to end. And I don't want to sound like a bleeding heart. I mean, I'm a combat veteran. I know what it's like, but this isn't about crushing one side or the other. This is about stopping it now, because there's no service for it at all, except for very few people who are getting rich from it. And that's it.
Well, you mentioned you're a combat veteran, I think that gives you even more of insight as to what you're speaking about compared to a lot of these people in America who are putting the Ukrainian flag in their bio, and anybody who tries to speak out and say anything, you're a Putin sympathizer, all this stuff. What would you kind of say to the people who are this putting the Ukrainian flag in their bio and promoting this war and all of that? I don't think that they truly understand what they are doing or saying and the consequences of what they're promoting. So what would be your response to those people who are doing those things?
Oh man, the nice version. Yeah. Well, let's back it off a little bit first. I think the fact is this: we become a lazy society. We take what's in front of us and believe it. Period. Oh, this is online, so it must be true. Unless it's against my narrative, then I don't believe it. So we already know that's going on. So for me, it's all about self-reflection and doing your own research and finding out where it's like when I mentioned in the video about Zelensky's villa. I got all these things. Oh, it's not true. Google it. It's really hard to find anymore because they scrub it clean, right? It's really hard to find. But there's articles there that show that it's true and that he actually owns these villas and stuff in Italy, like you were talking about, and in Spain, I think he has one or whatever. So you got to do your own research. And this is the thing: if you're going to talk about this with somebody, drop the attitude, drop the emotion, and find out what the hell is going on, and look for a solution. That's the biggest problem I see, is that you talk about all these narrators and all these news people and all these politicians. They're talking about the problem, but no one's presenting a solution. What's the goddamn solution? And the solution is end this thing right now. And of course, the people in charge are making all the money, so they don't want to end it.
No,
so
not until they've got another. Yeah, exactly. They don't want this conflict to end until there's another proxy war, another war for Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, and everybody else to go profit from. They don't care if that new front's going to be in Syria, Taiwan, wherever across the Middle East, or if they just keep their iron in the fire in Ukraine. And that's the thing.
Syria now, doesn't it? Since yesterday, Syria.
Yeah, that's the new card on the table now, is how long will there be conflict there? And how deeply can we get involved, and who all can we sell weapons to? But when it goes back, a lot of the situation in Ukraine does go back to the Soviet Union moving people over there, and they created a region that is now Russian speaking, relates more closely to Russia, and that same region was getting abused by the Ukrainian government for years, on and off, going back for almost 20 years. That's where the Azov Battalion was operating prior to this conflict starting. So those people deserve peace, and if that is now going to be by joining Russia, having them defend them and protect them from the Ukrainian government, that may be a way that everybody wins. But right now things are so spun out of control because there's so much money involved. So many people are just looting the treasury here in the U.S. and in Ukraine. And that's the other thing, is Ukraine's nation is going to be absolutely devastated. Is already absolutely devastated. But the sooner this conflict ends, the sooner they get back to rebuilding and have some kind of normalcy, because it's going to take decades and decades to recover from this, especially considering the number of young men that have died on both sides of this conflict that didn't need to be, that died unnecessarily.
Well, you said it, the rebuilding.
Yeah.
And so that's the flip side of the coin, right? Who got the contract for that already? BlackRock.
Yeah, well, exactly.
So,
they went their 15-minute cities.
So think about it. First they destroy it, then they rebuild it. That's our MO, right? So yeah, okay, we ended the war. We're good guys now. All right, the contractors go in. They're going to start rebuilding everything, and they're going to profit again. The only thing that can happen is if they put in, like they're doing in Guam, they're moving the U.S. Navy and the Marine head from Japan to Guam. They have like a $14 billion project down there. 25% of all the contracts have to go to small veteran-owned businesses. And so maybe something like that could be kicked in, where you have small businesses that can help rebuild Ukrainian businesses or European businesses or American businesses or whatever, that go in there to try to help it. And so we could, spread some of the wealth to the people that actually matter.
Yeah. Well, let's actually, we're kind of running a little bit low on time. We got another break we got to take here in a second. So actually, let's go ahead and do that. We're going to take a break a minute or two early, hear from our sponsors. When we get back, I want to discuss the other cookie jar you've got your hand in, AFD over in Germany, and then kind of how we're seeing there and in other places across Europe now, where there's this move to the right. The people want freedom. They want to step away from globalism. So stay with us. We're going to hear from one other sponsor, and then we'll be right back with even more.
Hey, Patriot TV fans, feel like there's nothing on the radio for like-minded, intelligent people like yourself? Well, great news. Now you can stream Patriot TV on TuneIn during your drive to or from work. Whether you're stuck in traffic or cruising down the highway, you can catch every conversation from your favorite show hosts right in your car. No more mindless jibber-jabber. Tune in 24/7 on the road, at the gym, or wherever you are. Download the free TuneIn app now on Apple, Android, or your computer and never miss a beat. Patriot TV, now on TuneIn.
My name is General Mike Flynn, and I want everyone to know that I stand fully behind Beverly Hills Precious Metals and its owner, Andrew Sorcini. We are facing one of the greatest periods of financial uncertainty in both American and world history, and so now is the time to organize your finances. With the advent of the BRICS pay system, we need to now seriously consider how we can take better care of ourselves and our families and start some serious decision making when it comes to our wealth. You can also ask about their newest 2-ounce coin of yours truly. It's an absolutely great gift, and I am deeply honored to be part of history, as well as helping people protect their finances, their wealth, and their investments. So visit gold.generalflynn.com. Tell them the General sent you. Thank you so very much. God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you for staying with us. And the best way to support our program and all the programs on Patriot TV is by supporting our sponsors. You go to patriot.tv, click on our program, and then that'll give you access to all the sponsors, everybody that makes this possible, and helps us to bring you the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. Now, as we've seen across a lot of Europe, they've really lurched to the right. They've moved, the people want to move to the right, that there is a growing nationalist movement and political outsiders, whether that's Marine Le Pen or others, Nigel Farage over in the UK. But in Germany, AFD, they've used every law they can to try to prevent these people from taking power and prevent a real change in Germany. I don't even know where to start with this, so I'll just hand it off to you.
All right. Well, I served in Germany in the U.S. Army for 7 years. I learned German while I was under border patrol in the 80s and 90s. And then I got out and stayed in Berlin, and I opened up some businesses, a bunch of businesses. And then I met a couple in 2003, and they had just founded the Civil Coalition of Germany. And I joined them, and it was the three of us, and we built this organization up to the largest non-party political organization in Germany. Brought out a website which was the 5th most visited website in Germany. And it was all about conservatism. It was all about for the people. It was all about basically what Trump says before Trump was even in the picture. And that's now turned into the party, the AfD, which was taken over. And now those two people, my partners, one of them is Beatrix von Storch. She's now the vice chair of the AfD, and her husband Sven is the parliamentary general manager of the German parliament. And we're still very good friends. Matter of fact, he just wrote me right now, actually. It's funny. So we got Sven von Storch and Beatrix von Storch that are basically heading up the entire fight. Because you're right, the German parliament, the other parties. Most people don't know there's 7 parties in Germany, right? So you have the old parties and you have the new parties. Every year there's a new party coming out. They disappear and another one takes its place. And everyone thought the AfD was going to be one of those, flash pan kind of situations. But it grew so quick. It's the fastest growing party in the history of Germany.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I believe it. People are tired of what's gone over there with this constant invasion from refugees. That same thing we're seeing here now with the open border. That it's crushed their culture, their civilization, and in a lot of ways, they're still living under this kind of false specter of oppression from World War II. That there's no faith in their country, similar to Weimar Republic, and people are tired of being apologetic for what happened 80 plus years ago. Now they want to restore their country to something they can be proud of, and not something that's being destroyed by this invasion and by these liberal rules, the liberal economic order, and this globalism, that globalist creep, both through the WEF, through the EU, through the UN, through everything else. That the people want to take it back and do what's best for Germany again.
It's you think it's bad in America, go to Germany. Yeah. They have 99 verified by law genders, right? 99. How the hell is it even possible, right? So then they have all these laws they're passing, which are just ridiculous, that everyone knows is BS, but they do it anyway because it's along the agenda of changing the world for a better place and all this stuff. But what's interesting is one of the fastest growing groups of supporters for the AfD, and if you go on TikTok, you'll find this, young girls, 23, 25, 26, they're doing the AfD dance, right?
Yes, Ausländer raus.
Yeah, it's this whole movement of the young people in Germany going, wait, we've had enough of this stuff. Who are these old people telling us that we're wrong and that we're Nazis and that we shouldn't be acting like this and we shouldn't care for who we are and where we come from? Because that's what's being said. Anytime that you say, what about the Germans? Oh, you're a Nazi. Instantly, you're stamped a Nazi. And so for years, people tiptoed through these landmines of being called a Nazi. And now it's like, you know what? They're going to call us that anyway. So let's just move forward on this. And Beatrix is on the news every night. She's on the parliament floor every day. And she doesn't give a damn. She's like saying like it is. And it's if you watch anything, she does some interviews in English, and she does some things in English as well. Nigel Farage even campaigned for the AfD, and he's a big supporter of the AfD as well as vice versa. So it all started when the AfD came into power. Beatrix went into the European Parliament first, fought her way up, became a direct mandate to the German Parliament, and now she just got reelected again last week as a direct mandate to the German Parliament. So the movement is there. It's the fastest growing party in Germany. They have in the eastern part of Germany the largest share of voters of the other parties as well. So it's inevitable. But like you said, they're using every law to try to outlaw this party. They're trying to outlaw the party, saying it's Nazis. And anyone who looks at reality and doesn't look at the narrative goes, wait a second. All they're saying is like, take care of the Germans. Why are you giving money to everybody else except for us? The same thing is happening in America right now. $1 billion to Africa, but no one in the Carolinas gets any money for the flood. It's like, or for the hurricane. So the same thing's happening in Germany. And I was there when this invasion of and it was an invasion. It was crazy when all these immigrants came in, these illegal immigrants came in, and I was in Hungary at the time too. And Hungary said, no, excuse me, but you have to register in the first European nation that you come into. And Germans were like, no, let them come through to Germany. And they're like, no, we're not. So I went to the train station in Budapest. There must have been 20,000 refugees there. And I brought my camera and I was trying to find a Syrian. I couldn't find one. Finally, I found 4 out of all those thousands of people that were from Syria, and it was a doctor. And this doctor said, and I was like, what are you doing? He had a beard, he had 2 kids. And I was like, no, what are you doing? He was in a tent. And he said, actually, they were paying us. There was a line at the bank. They gave you 3,500 euros and said, you can go. They gave him money to come to Europe. They gave them money to come to Europe. And he said, of course I'm coming to Europe. I'm a doctor, and it's like, blows your mind. And then you have, then they couldn't leave Hungary. So I know some taxi drivers in Budapest. Check this out. See, these are stories you don't hear. So they didn't know what euros were. They didn't even know what 3,500 euros were. And 3,500 euros is about $4,000, right?
Yes,
so it's a good amount of money. These taxi drivers was like, hey, I'll drive you to Austria where you'll be safe for $3,000. And so these guys taxi drivers are driving to 2 hours from Budapest to the Austrian border for $3,000 all day long, like this. And those like taxi drivers that are buying houses now, you know what I mean?
Yeah, making a killing.
Yeah. And so it was just all levels of scam. It's just ridiculous. And what happened was New Year's Eve, the year after this exodus became, or the exodus of the influx, is there was a 350 to 400% increase in rapes in Germany, just rapes. There was a village of 1,000 people. And what did they do? They put 1,000 male refugees in this village. So you had 1,000 people there, wife and husbands and kids and grandma and grandpas. All of a sudden, 1,000 refugees show up. They're all men, all young. What do you think happened then? And on top of that, every single one of them lost their passport and said they were from Syria or Libya or wherever, which they weren't. Most of them were Afghani, Persian, Iranians. And they lied about their age. So you have full-grown men with beards saying they're 16 years old so that when they break these laws, they can't get put in jail.
Yeah, and they're going to school with their kids and all these other things too.
There was a German soldier. There was a German soldier that challenged the system. Let me tell you this real quick. He went to the border and he threw his passport away and said, "Hey, and he doesn't even speak. He doesn't speak any Arabic at all." Of course, and they said, "Oh, okay, here you go." And they put him in a home. They gave him money, and it was like he was treated like everybody. It was crazy. So he blew the system up. Of course, he got arrested because he was actually a German citizen and in the army. So, but he made a point. Yeah.
Well, hey, really quick, I want to give a shout out to Kelly Song, Dan Dreyer in the Rumble chat, and then in the Twitter chat, Thaddeus, Pita Chips, and Kelly. Thank you guys for hanging out with us here. You mentioned earlier how the young people are really flocking to the AFD, and then they're trying to outlaw it. I think that there's something that the elites misunderstood or at least took for granted and think back to yourself when you were young, and no matter how long ago that was, forever's watching. There's a rebellious streak of when you're younger, and when somebody tells you can't do something, it makes you want to do it that much more. So they're almost fighting against themselves, and they're trying to outlaw these things. And the young people are like, starting to do the dance and all that. But this is not only for the audience, but for myself. Like in layman's terms, it sounds like, and I want you to correct me. What are the core principles of the AFD platform? It sounds like this is like the Make Germany Great Again movement over there compared to the MAGA movement here. Is that a proper understanding on my end? And if not, correct it. I mean, what's the core principles of the platform?
Well, that's exactly what it is. I mean, I actually had them hats made when they were campaigning back in the day. Make Germany Great Again. The same exact red hat with the same the same font and everything.
That's awesome.
Great Again. And they were wearing them. They got all kinds of flack for that. But actually, I was in Pennsylvania at the time. I had them made in Pennsylvania and brought them back to Germany just so they could have original caps from the States. And so it's exactly what it is. It's the same narrative. It's the same background. Look, you put Germans first. You take care of the Germans first. You take care of the German family. You keep the nuclear family as the main priority. Children, save them. Keep them safe. It's the same thing, family values. And that's honestly, that's why I like living in Turkey. There's man, there's woman, there's child, and that's it. And the values that people live by here are mom and dad and children. Number one, that's a priority. We keep it like that. It's safe. It's the place, it's the place where the families matter most. And that's the strength of any society when you have a family. So that's what the AFD wants, and that's what obviously the MAGA movement in America wants as well.
Yeah, and that was I mentioned to you offline that I met with a number of people from AFD members while I was over in Romania, and that was kind of what they brought up. Is a lot of them these were younger guys and a younger woman, and they said, that they're being told not to believe their lying eyes about all the crime, the escalation there. It's the constant abuse for being German or wanting to take back Germany for the German people, to stop making all these moves that are in lockstep with the globalists that are destroying their nation. And there's only so much of that people were willing to take. And I think they finally got past that boiling point in Germany a few years ago, and now you're seeing that explosion, that result because of that. That now it's the younger people wanting a real future. They're seeing it being robbed from them and stripped away, unlike previous generations. That they're in a position now where they'll never be able to own a house. They can't pursue a career or have a family because the cost of living has gone up so much. Yep. You still have people within government lining their own pockets and importing more and more refugees, which is robbing them of further opportunity. And once that gets to a boiling point, that's where you have this explosion, like you do with AFD, where now the German alternative for Germany is the only path forward, and more people are starting to see it. But we're seeing the same thing around the world. The globalists are losing their grip because the people are sick of it. They want to go back to looking out for ourselves, no more endless wars, and get back to a financial and immigration system that actually makes sense by controlling our own borders and not just looting the treasury constantly.
Well, and that's the scary thing about it is that I hope that the momentum we gain is enough to take back control, because in the States, it looks like through Elon Musk, whatever his role is, whatever, talking about buying MSNBC, he bought X, turned Twitter, turned it into X. These are things that have to happen. We have to take back the narrative, the ability to control the narrative. Because right now the narrative is controlled by the left, complete left, the extreme left, the ultra left. Yeah. And everyone talks about the right. It's not the right, right? It's the center right.
Well,
we're talking conservative center right. Exactly. But people immediately say, oh, Trump, far right. No, it's not far right. Same thing with the AFD. No, it's not far right. It's center right.
Common sense.
The people of your country come first. It's common sense. The people of your country come first. Why is it a country otherwise?
Yeah.
You're not a country without your people. And without Austrians, there's no Austria. Without Germans, there's no Germany. So what's the point of someone saying that's right wing if you're saying, wait a second, I'm German, I live in Germany, so why not look out for us?
Well, I think that's a really good point to make, and I think that is why they're doing what they're doing. Is they don't want individual sovereign countries. They want a global world order, if you will. And so I don't think that a lot of people have even thought about it that deep, but that's really what it comes down to, because as you just said, what's the point of countries? And they're hoping to flood all these countries like this. So then it's to the point where even the people are saying, wait a second, what's the point of having a country if we're all so, intermigrated here? Let's just be one, big giant human thing or whatever. And I think that's their end goal here is a global world order, if you will, so that they can push their agenda on everybody and put their thumb on the scale. And also for Americans need to realize that ends the U.S. Constitution if that ever comes. And goodbye to your natural God-given rights being protected by the Constitution.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here, but one of the reasons for the immigration was to crush the strong economies of Europe, so that you could bring the valuation down, and so that everybody on the planet is making shit money. Basically, in America, that didn't work. So what do? They load you up with debt. Every American has like 70 grand debt when they're born, or 50 grand, whatever it is when they're born. Yep. So right now, during COVID, I was talking to some cops who were like throwing people on the ground for not wearing a mask. I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you, man? He's like, dude, if I don't do this, I lose my pension. I said, wait a second. So you're taking someone's civil liberties for 40 grand a year? Are you freaking kidding me? Where's your honor? Where's your integrity? But that's what it is. There's so much debt on every single American head that if they don't do what they're told, or if they step out of line, they're in trouble. And so they couldn't crush them with the economic side, let's say, taking the jobs away and all that kind of stuff. So they're crushing them with debt. And that's been a long-term plan. I don't know if you've ever talked about that before, but America is
you're correct.
In deep trouble with debt. And I know people, including family members, that are just swimming, and it's every month it's fighting to the very last penny of surviving.
And these are people with good jobs who are living paycheck to paycheck. This isn't like how it used to be. I mean, you can make $100,000 a year and you're still struggling paycheck to paycheck, and you're not necessarily living that far above your means or anything. I mean, you're a normal person. That's where we've gotten to with this, and our national debt as a whole as a country I think the interest alone is around $1 trillion a year now. I mean, it's unbelievable what we're paying in terms of the debt. And you're absolutely correct. It is absolutely crushing. And I believe that our national debt has gotten to a point that it's a matter of national security at this point in America.
Oh, most certainly it is. Not to mention it's on the Federal Reserve, which everyone knows is a private organization, a private company. So that's a whole other conversation.
Oh yeah. We're actually almost out of time here. What's the best place for our audience to find you?
I would say Instagram. Steven Eugene Kuhn is my name, or wherever you can find, anywhere on X as well. Steven Kuhn, Steven Eugene Kuhn. You'll find me if you Google me. It's the same name everywhere. Steven Eugene Kuhn, Facebook or whatever. I'm not a big Facebook guy, but Instagram and X.
Oh, perfect. Well, we'll make sure I've got that in the video description. So, guys, there's a link. You can go follow his X profile, or Instagram should be linked in the description for the video. And again, you're brave for speaking out about what's going on over there in both, well, in a variety of countries, because and your book, Humble Alpha. Forgot to mention that. Yeah, give us a plug for your book real quick.
Yeah, a Humble Alpha is about becoming the epic leader you're meant to be and owning your presence. It's all about owning who you are as a true identity. And this is what makes you a sovereign person. This is what makes you who you really are. Because who you are isn't what you do, it's what's inside of you. And this is what this book is all about.
Well, again, another reason to pick it up. And I want to, again, thank you for joining us today. I think we really learned a lot. Unfortunately, we had a technical issue at the beginning of the show, so we weren't getting comments till about halfway through. But we'll have to bring you back on, because I'm sure our audience would have a lot of good questions for you, considering Ukraine, Germany, and everywhere else. Because, again, that's something we've focused on a few times now. We talk a lot about making America great again, but really the battle is going to be to crush globalism. And the way we're going to do that is by getting center, moderate, or right-leaning parties, common sense, back into office across the entire world. We're seeing, the South America, 3 nations now moving to the further to the right, restoring the rights of their people. And again, that's going to make us all succeed. It's going to reduce the possibility of war. And at some point, maybe we can stand up to communist China then and crush them economically instead of having to go into World War III. But guys, I want to thank you again for staying with us. Please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to grow so we can bring more people the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. And we're going to be back again soon with more.